This video will contain spoilers from the off, so remember, you've been warned. The final episode is here, and it's time to say goodbye to a show that is truly one of a kind. With the ending of the previous episode finishing on a cliffhanger with the conversation that Ted was going to be having with Rebecca, we had it confirmed that Ted was finally going to be leaving and going back home to be with Henry. But with the Premier League title on the line, he was sticking around for the final game, with an ending that was extremely powerful, emotional, and tied back to the very beginning. Let's recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this final episode. So let's get into it. Here is Ted Lasso Season 3 Episode 12, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The episode's final scene, closing off with the song Father and Son by Cat Stevens, was the perfect track to have underneath it. Ted was always about going home, and the conflict in his mind from the moment that he waved goodbye to Henry on the plane way back in episode 1. And now he could be the father to his son that he yearned to be and wasn't afraid to be anymore. With there being one final game of the season, we saw that AFC Richmond were facing West Ham, and they had to get a result and hope that City would lose in order for them to pick up the Premier League title, something which was originally so far out of reach. With the game ending at 3-2 with a lively 94th minute winner by the Richmond boys, we were left wondering if they ended up winning the overall title. However, once Ted was at the airport, it was confirmed by a fan of Ted's that they came second, something which was gutting to hear. However, it tied into a couple of different hints that we had throughout the show. The soundtrack for the trailer for the season was You Can't Always Get What You Want, and the song in the closing moments of the previous episode was a track that contained the lyrics, "It's better to have fought and lost than never fought at all," so they were almost destined to not win the trophy. However, the show was about more than winning. It was about togetherness, a journey, and most importantly, believing in each other and oneself, something which we did see the team have right at the end. With them all having a piece of the sign being kept close to them, it showed what Ted had put in their minds and showed the value of what it all meant. Let's jump into the endings for each of the characters. Ted. Ted had made the decision to go home, and no matter how hard anybody tried to persuade him, he wasn't going to change his mind. He was most definitely the least emotional when compared to everybody else, and I felt like that was a nice touch. Throughout this season, we saw Ted inside of his head and being quite emotional on many different occasions, but this time round, he wasn't. He was sad, but it wasn't like how we saw him when he thought of being back home or with Henry, which showed us that he knew that he was making the right decision and he didn't doubt it at all, no matter how much it was impacting the people around him. There was a lovely scene of both Ted and Rebecca sitting in the ground where she was trying to persuade him, and he barely uttered a word, which showed just how confident he was in the decision. There was also a moment between Ted and Nate where Nate apologized for what he did at the end of season 2 and for the barrier that was between them, a moment which was all season in the making. And despite not being the most articulate apology, the emotion between the both of them was enough to show just how real it felt and the sincerity behind it. After coming second in the league after the final game, we saw that Ted got on his flight back to the States, and it looked like he was coaching his son's football team. As he spoke to Henry, he gave the advice that he first gave to Sam Obisanya in Season 1 Episode 2, where he said, "Be a goldfish," essentially meaning to not look back and fester on your mistakes, but instead, with the 10-second memory that a goldfish has, just adopt that and move on, allowing you to live in the present and progress. The final time that we saw Ted, we saw him looking off into the distance, and then he broke the fourth wall by looking directly down the lens of the camera. He smiled slightly, and it was a look to us, to almost imply that he can't believe that he's back home with his son and living the life that he was. It was Ted's endgame. It was the perfect end to Ted Lasso and the character's arc. It is such a shame that the show will be no more. But Ted's journey throughout this season of understanding what he wanted in life and owning the decision to be with his son and breaking down the barrier that he had with him that he put up due to fearing that he would one day lose him like he lost his father was incredibly emotional to witness. Ted may not have been the best coach in the world, but one line that he said really summed up his time as head coach. He arrived not knowing anything about soccer, but he now knows at least one thing about football. With Ted receiving the snow globe from Keeley, and as we heard, with one only being purchased from a place that you go to and don't go back, it symbolized the end for Ted in Richmond for good, rather than just a short goodbye. We saw that the book that Trent wrote was originally called The Lasso Way, but the title was changed to The Richmond Way. Ted saying it was never about me showed just how selfless the character was, and that he always thought of the team as the family that he had, and that they deserved the credit that they had all earned. Ted Lasso, you will be missed, and the powerful episodes that we got on a weekly basis that allowed this comedy to feel real and provide more tears than laughter is something that will last long in the history books of great shows in its field. Rebecca. Rebecca really didn't want Ted to go. What started as a hire to annoy Rupert turned into a true friendship and a person that she grew a deep connection with, so much so that she was considering selling the entirety of the club if he were to leave for a whopping £2 billion. She felt like Ted represented more than just a manager for the club. Ted was the club, and everything that the club had become was because of him, and the love, care, passion and personality that he put into it. Hence why she felt as though she wanted to leave. However, we ultimately saw that she decided to stay. Rebecca had wholly moved on from Rupert and wasn't about letting him impact her mind anymore, or wanting to get one up on him. She didn't care about the gossip or even the scandal that was surrounding him, as he was being investigated for inappropriate behavior in the workplace. Right at the end of the episode, we saw that she was at the airport alongside Ted, and she thanked him for everything that he had done whilst he had been there, and for being the person that she could turn to in her time of need that would never judge, only offer advice and be the shoulder that she needed to rest her head on. It was far different from how it was when they first met. With it feeling like the final sign of Rebecca being a mother was unresolved, a young girl fell over in front of her, and as she looked up, it was the mystery man from Amsterdam. He was a pilot that was standing there, showing that they were truly meant to be together, and that was the meaning of the final sign. As we saw later on down the line, they were together. There were images in his boat relating to flying, so there were even signs for us. With Rebecca selling 49% of the shares to the fans, it showed what the club was truly about and what it represented. It was the perfect way for her arc to end, no longer looking to seek revenge on Rupert, and fully adopting the happiness that she felt that she deserved. Roy is the new AFC Richmond manager, and I think he thoroughly deserved it. This was revealed right at the end of the episode once Ted left. Roy wanted so desperately to be with Keeley, and it was something that we never actually saw being resolved, but I feel like that was the perfect way for it to be, because it's almost like what life is like. You know that they're out there and they're going to be still working through that. We saw Roy and Jamie's friendship being tested as they both wanted to be with Keeley, but after confronting her and asking who she'd rather be with, they realized that what they did was stupid. Roy wanted to be this perfect person that was far different to who he was before, but it was something that was never going to happen and was perfectly put by Leslie when he said, "Human beings are never going to be perfect. The best we can do is keep asking for help and accepting it when you can. And if you keep on doing that, you'll always be moving towards better." Something which we saw Roy doing at the end when we saw that he was seeking professional help from Dr. Sharon. He asked for help, and it looks as though it's something that's going to be addressed throughout the rest of his life. There were moments of true emotion from Roy in this final episode which I thought were great, plus we saw that he finally became a diamond dog. Nate's story was one that I felt a little underwhelmed with in terms of his career path, but I suppose it's the one that he deserved due to the way that he acted. He was never going to walk back in and take the top job, but I just thought with him being a manager of West Ham and having great tactical knowledge, he'd be higher up than assistant kitman. Nate's redemption was completed in this episode where we saw him being back at AFC Richmond and apologising to Ted when he was looking up at where the Believe sign once was. With both Ted and Nate looking across at each other from both ends of the table as the team were piecing together the sign, and with Nate having tears in his eyes, it showed how much it meant between the both of them, and that it was almost like the mending of their relationship. The sign which Nate once tore up because he was annoyed with Ted became the symbol of their friendship, and it was now being put back together. Nate's redemption showed that he wasn't the true villain of the season. It was Ted's thoughts and the troubles that he had to overcome. We last saw Nate in the restaurant with Jade and enjoying being with his family, showing that the troubles that he had gone through at home were no more. With Nate's tactic also being used in the free kick that ultimately won AFC Richmond the game, there was an ounce of contribution there too. Other callouts. In terms of the other characters and the way that they rounded off, Coachbeard ended up getting off the plane and marrying Jane, which was nice to see. Colin was publicly with Michael. Keeley had a thriving business, albeit looking as though it was on a smaller scale, but she seemed to be happier with Rebecca in charge. She also put forward a women's AFC Richmond team idea, so it looked as though the club was expanding and branching out. Could we potentially see a spin-off there? Sam was finally called up to the Nigerian national team. And Jamie had picked up contact with his father as he was in the rehabilitation centre with him. Let's also not forget, longtime fans got to buy shares in the club, so May and the regulars each had their certificate, providing happy endings all round, other than Rupert, who it seemed got what he deserved. There were a couple of funny news snippets in the magazine and newspaper right at the end, which I thought was a nice touch. Zava was going back to play football, and he was playing for LAFC. Shandy had launched the dating app that she said that she would, and there was also a headline that said, Jack Danvers is no longer daddy's little girl. So I wonder if that means that she was onto better things, or if her father had cut her off. Overall review. I thought this final episode was great. It was perfect. It was the best way for us to bid farewell to a character that we've come to love over the years. It was emotional, exciting, heartbreaking, yet also joyous to watch. Ted finally got what he wanted and what he needed. He was back with his son, and everything that the show stood for was fully present in this extended episode. Jason Sudeikis and Hannah Waddingham stole this episode. They were phenomenal, and we got the rawest performances from them that I feel we've ever had. This was what Ted Lasso the show was all about, and it was a pleasure to watch. I'm gutted that the show is finished because it's definitely cemented its place as one of the best as what it does. Whether that be in becoming a cult classic in years to come or being fondly remembered by all. I believe. We all believed, and I think the Richmond way is something that many of us could take and adopt into our own lives. So long, farewell, Ted Lasso. So, there you have it, Ted Lasso Season 3 Episode 12, Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @BrainPilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of the finale? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.